Welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast, where we talk to C-level leaders from across the payments landscape. We'll be discussing the products and services that impact the payment space today, as well as trends and predictions for the future of payments. We will also hear stories from our guests about their journeys to the top.
So I would say these two things are very important: education and your own values and your own expectations on what you want coming from that business relationship, that labor relationship. Everything else is easy to manage, and everything else is about being ready and open to change, to transformations, to challenges, and everything related to that. Because once you are in this, I would say, equilibrium, everything else is easier to be managed.
That was Germana Cruz, the CEO and head of financial institutions LATAM for Standard Chartered Bank. And she is my special guest on this episode 242 of the Leaders in Payments podcast. And I'm your host, Greg Myers. This is our third episode in our Women Leaders in Payments series. Germana is a true example of what it takes to be a female leader in our industry. She started at Burger King as a ham and cheese guru, working her way up to cashier, and all of this to pay for her ESL classes. And now, she's the CEO and head of Financial Institutions LATAM at Standard Chartered Bank. Germana has learned how to always be ready for the unexpected. In fact, she embraces it. As for her guiding principles, she has three. Invest in your education first and foremost, followed by managing expectations and identifying your values in a manner that prevents you from crossing your own lines. We've got a great episode ahead, so let's get started. Hi, Germana. Thank you for being here and welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast. And more specifically, thank you for participating during Women Leaders in Payments Month.
Thank you, Greg. Pleased to be here too.
Great. So let's get started. If you don't mind, tell our audience about your role today, and then we'll kind of rewind and talk about your journey and how you got there.
Sure. Thank you again. And I am Germana Cruz. I am currently the CEO and head of financial institutions for Latin America at Standard Chartered. I'm based in São Paulo, Brazil, and I manage from here the three offices that we have in the region in Argentina and Colombia. And basically, in my role, I am responsible for managing the business as a whole, as well all the governance and risks and control for the region.
Great. So where did you grow up and what was your life like growing up?
Okay, so I am born and raised in Brazil, in the city of São Paulo. So all my life has been here. My family, it's here too. My father immigrated from Portugal, so he's Portuguese. And then here he met my mom, so my whole family is here. And my career is also here. So all those years, including those with Standard Chartered, I've been spending here in São Paulo, Brazil, in different roles and different coverages, but always being here.
And during this time when you were growing up, were you more like the lemonade stand builder, like the entrepreneur, or were you more like the planner or organizer of the Friday night out with your friends?
I would classify myself as more a planner, organized person, but I do like to have some distractions, I would say, or some different things to face and take me a little bit away from the routine. But most of the time, I would say I like to have the routine. I like to be planning. I like to kind of anticipate what is coming. But over those years, I learned that we need always to be ready for the unexpected. So in that sense, I think I have an equilibrium between two. But most of the time, I like to be a planner and organizer person.
And this next question is about your first job, but I always like to share my first job. My mother worked at a university, a small university, and she got me a job washing pots and pans every day in the summer. So I couldn't even drive. She had to take me. So I think I was probably 15. But from 10 to 2 every day in the summer, I washed pots and pans. So curious, what was your first job?
Sure. I normally say that my first official job was with my professor from the college time. I was finishing my last year in graduation, and he needed some help to translate some documentation related to economics theory, and most of them were in English language. So my English at that time was more or less good. So he asked me to help. It was a paid job, so I got some money on that. But then with that money, when I finished the college, I understood that I need to enhance my English language. So I started looking for schools like English as a second language. And then after the research, I found there's a school in Boston And then I had that money, but it was not enough. So I called my dad and I asked him to help me to complete and to complement the money. He agreed after I guaranteed to him that I was not going there to travel, to enjoy the place, but also to learn a language. And then I moved to Boston. And then after 1 month, which was the period originally that I had agreed with the school, I realized that I need more time. And then I had to find a job. And then the first job that was, I would say, I could share was with Burger King. And then I started at the ham and cheese sandwich station. And I stayed there for a couple months. And then the branch manager told me that he felt I would have the energy to become a cashier and then would pay more. And then, of course, I accepted and then I became a cashier. So during 6 months or more, I worked at Burger King. And with the money that I saved there, I was able to pay an extension course in Harvard University for the other 6 months. So in total, I stay in Boston for 1 year. And I would say that my official, signed document in terms of first job was with Burger King in Boston.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And if I'm not mistaken, most of your career has been in financial services and at Standard Chartered Bank. So was there something intriguing about financial services and why Standard Chartered Bank?
You're right. My whole career, I started working for banks and it's been that since the beginning. I think what attracted me to the banking system is still during the college time. And here in Brazil, as you probably know, all this volatility on the political and economic situations and markets were attracting us to understand more the dynamics, to understand what would be the impact of this high inflation in our lives. And then banks at that time were the location where you could live that, you could breathe, and then you could understand the dynamics, you could understand the explanations, you could understand how to kind of predict the future and be ready for that. So since the beginning, I was attracted to the banking system as a whole. Banks in particular, not broker-dealers or insurance companies, were more banks because I felt I wanted to get the action and feel exactly what would happen every day. And then since then, I moved to the banking system. I started with a French bank called Société Générale. Then I moved to a local bank called Banco BMC, which was later on bought by Banco Bradesco, which is one of the largest Brazilian banks. Then I moved to Deutsche Bank. And then I stayed with Deutsche Bank until 2003. And since 2003, I am with Standard Chartered. So throughout my career time, as I said, most of the time I spent with Standard Chartered. And what attracted me to Standard Chartered was the fact that when I I joined the selection process at Standard Chartered, I was in between jobs because in year 2002, Deutsche Bank decided to shut down the area that I was part of, which was already financial institutions coverage. And that was a result of the political instability in Brazil at that time, where a leftist candidate, Mr. Lula, was elected. So it was a lot of new things and uncertainties in the radar. So they decided to shut down. And it was not easy, right? For any of us, when you lose your job and it's not your fault, it was not anything that we did wrong. It was because of an external factor. I felt like maybe there was a time to turn my career and look for other things. So what I decided at that time was I will send my resumes only to corporations. I think I do have a very good background and nice experience in the financial services area that I could add value to corporations on the finance area, for example, or investor relations area. So that was my strategy. And after a couple of months, I started getting some interviews, not resulting in positive things. So in one of them, which was the last one, I asked the person, I'm sharing with you, I went through all the process. It didn't went through. Do you know, or didn't go through? Do you have any feedback to me? And basically this lady told me, said, Germana, you do have a very nice and strong resume. But our experience on the corporate side is that when we try to bring people from the financial services, where the dynamics is very different. You guys are used to have fast decision makers. Everything happens overnight because this is how the financial markets behave. It's very different for us on the corporations, right? Because here we are planning about producing goods and having plants and building things that normally take months or years sometimes. So our experience is that when we bring those professionals, even though they have a very nice resume, they get frustrated very rapidly. And then it becomes an issue for both sides because we see the person not performing because of that. And we are expecting things that the person is not delivering at the same time. So that's why we hesitate in getting professionals with your expertise. So my recommendation to you, go back to the banking system. I think you do well there. And that's what I did. So after that conversation, I started sending my resumes to the banks again. And I got a lot more interviews. And one of them was with the Standard Chartered. And the Standard Chartered was already changing the head of financial institutions at that time because the CEO was retiring. So the head of financial institution was moving to the CEO position. So they were looking for somebody to cover the FI business. And one of the things that I mentioned to them was exactly what I told you. So I told my story and I said, now I am married and I have a son. He is 2 years old. So I would like to spend more time with him. This year that I stayed at home was very good for me. And I wanted to not lose that connection. And then Standard Chartered immediately said, of course, we also believe in that balance between professional and your individual lives. You are going to have your own laptop. So if you need to leave earlier because you have to do something with him or schools or whatever, you can then connect later on and you can finish your work from there. So don't worry, we are open to that. So this was, I think, the most important thing. Everything else, of course, was good, was an international bank, very big, long-standing presence in Brazil and Latin America. The important point for me was this balance between my private and professional life that since the beginning said that they were open to. And here I am 20 years after that and very pleased and enjoying the ride because throughout those 20 years, always in Brazil, a lot of things happen in terms of strategy, business strategy, growing, reducing, opening a bank, closing a bank. And throughout those years, I was always having that in my mind. It's important to have this equilibrium because once you feel like you're performing your role as a mother, as a family member, as a professional, it's pleasing you and you believe you're doing the right thing. Everything else goes right. So it's been a nice ride.
Great. So that does bring us up till today. So obviously you've been very successful in your career. So can you share with us some of your guiding principles?
Sure, Greg. My first guidance principle, and I've been repeating this every time I have these opportunities, is first education. I think you have to invest on your education. Right now, we are discussing a lot about how women are treated differently in the labor market as a whole, and especially in the financial services, which is, since the beginning is a market dominated by men, and how we are changing that profile and how we are showing that those differences should not happen. But I never believed that it was simply a thing about a man and woman, and because I am a woman, I need to be seen differently or vice versa. So what I keep telling to my colleagues is that, invest in your education, independently if you're a man or woman, invest on that. Because this is the base. If you are a professional, if you are qualified, if you have the skills for the position, I think the first box is ticked. And then you can start to the second level, having discussions about your personal profile, your career expectations. If you are competing with another man, why you would be different than that. But never insist in the topic that because I am a woman, I should have a preference. So education to me is the first topic because then you can get rid of all those questions about your performance, your profile, your skills, etc. Right? Second thing is about your values and how you identify yourself with the market as a whole, with the position. What are you doing today? And if it is aligned with the company or the bank that you are working with. As I mentioned before to you, what attracted me to Standard Chartered was that they understood my momentum. They understood that I need more time with my son. And then they said, I think you were open and we are both open to that and we should move to that direction. So having this alignment, it's important because then you go out every morning to look at your job and you see that you're producing something that is not resonating to the company because that would be the main target, but also is resonating with you. So you feel like you are constructing something for both sides and you are better managing this business relationship, because sometimes I also feel people thinking about, I am a hard worker. I work 20 hours a day and now nobody recognized me, or I was let go because, something happened. So why they did that to me? I was so much devoted and doing so many things for them. And this is also not healthy, because we need to understand that this is a business relationship, right? And then we need to respect ourselves and define the limit. So we go until we believe is the maximum. So we do not hurt anybody. And if something like that happens, which is very normal in the labor market as a whole, independently of the segment, you don't feel like it's personal. You don't feel like you as professional is being let go because they didn't recognize your value. You simply accept what happened, especially if something that is not on your control. So I would say these two things are very important: education and your own values and your own expectations on what you want coming from that business relationship, that labor relationship. Everything else is easy to manage, and everything else is about being ready and open to change, to transformations, to challenges, and everything related to that. Because once you are in this, I would say, equilibrium, everything else is easier to be managed.
Yeah. And you mentioned something there that, almost everyone has gone through being laid off or, a company not being successful. I mean, that happens, right? And I think other things happen in our career. Like we have these, what I call eye-opening moments in our careers where just something happens and it's such an eye-opening moment. Would you mind sharing with us maybe a few of those eye-opening moments in your career?
Sure, Greg. I think one of them, and it still resonates to me today, was already when the Standard Charter and I had a boss. And there were so many things that need to be changed, not only internally in terms of processes, but also the way we were dealing with the clients. And then one day I had a meeting with him and I told him, this is getting out of control. We need to change, A, B, C, D, E. And then he looked at me and he said, Germana, you need to choose your battles to win the war at the end. Do not choose all the battles. You're going to get burnt. You're going to get frustrated because some of them you do need to let go. You cannot fight for everything, but be more focused and think ahead and think about, okay, if I battle for this and that, it will help me to reach my goal at the end, which is to win the war. So that was eye-opening for me, because I thought with all the energy that we have, right, in our day-to-day, you sometimes try to solve all the problems and you are not able to do it. So you need to be more strategic in knowing exactly which ones you would like to do, you would like to battle in order to help you at the end. So this is still very important for me. The second was not with Standard Charter, was in the other job, that also my boss said I was complaining about some comments that I got, and a person that was in the call that was really rude with me. And then I was talking to him and said, I was not pleased to hear what the person said, and it was not my fault, etc. My boss said, Germana, sometimes you have to just listen, absorb, not complain, not contest. One day you will probably do something similar and somebody will have to do the same. We have to listen, absorb, kind of ignore. And this is part of the learning process, right? This is part of, one, respecting everybody's opinion. Sometimes it's not right. Second is understand those limits, because if the person's really going above and beyond on the wrong side, you have to let the person know about it. But sometimes it's better just to listen, because it's not you. Sometimes it's not related to you. It's a lot of everything else that is going on in the person's mind or around that is provoking that behavior. So be patient in that sense. Be patient, listen more, talk less, because sometimes probably you're going to do the same. So it's a two-way relationship in that sense that you have to be ready of it. So I think those would be the two eye-opening comments and advices that I got that I think is still important to me today.
What I find interesting when I ask this question is most of the responses that I get are things that people continue to think about, right? So your first one was, you tried to boil the ocean, you tried to do everything, and your boss said focus, and that's a great lesson, right? And one that you've carried with you throughout your career. And then the second one, I mean, gosh, who hasn't had people talk about them and, say things? So it's like, how do you react to that? So, I mean, those eye-opening moments are just things that you carry with you throughout your career.
That's 100% true.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. So let's talk a little bit about the bigger picture of women leaders in financial services. And, part of what I do with this month every year is I try to give people like you who are, female leaders in the financial services space, a platform to, talk about what's good, what needs work, what are we doing well as far as elevating, women leaders in this industry. So let's start off with just what letter grade would you give the industry as a whole and why?
Yeah. As I mentioned to you before, this was my first time having the connections with women leaders in payments. And I was really pleased to see how well organized it is and the focus they are having and the focus on mentoring, sponsorships, and conversations, bringing women all together in the same environment. So my comment basically would be that we should engage in more of those setups in terms of network that we can build, a safe place that we can be honest and transparent, that we can show off, our fears and comments, for somehow I got this thought and I thought that this was something coming to me. And then somebody say, you know why? I thought the same. And the result was a total different thing, because normally we tend as women to think similar or in the same direction depending on the topics. So my recommendation would be we should more and more get engaged with these forums, having those bilateral conversations, group conversations, whatever fits to the person and to the team, because I think we are getting there. I think we are. In the forum that I attended a couple of months ago, there was one comment from one lady that she was at the airport and she was catching a plane and she saw a guy that was her boss many years ago. And he was in between jobs. So while they were waiting for the plane, they were discussing this selection process and everything. And the guy said, I was shortlisted together with another person, a lady, but at the end they choose her. And then he looked at her and said, can you believe they choose a girl and not me for the position? And then she looked at him and said, welcome to the team, because I myself and my colleagues are really used to be facing those situations, because normally people would tend to select the boys instead of the girls. So there is a reversal in the process. Of course, we never know why the decision was making. We hope the decision was made because of the technical skills. So this woman would fit better the position, and not because it was a woman. And then thinking about quotas or anything that the corporations or the bank define in order to break the ice. And then there was a trigger. I can tell you that Standard Chartered, that's not the trigger. We do take into account all the technical skills before making a decision. So we will never select a person for a position because it is a woman per se. So in general, I would say that I think these are the experiences that we can share and can help more the women to feel more confident that they do have the capacity to move on. Sometimes we will see those situations happening, but we will be strong enough and prepared enough to face it. And that's the most important thing.
We've all heard the terms embedded payments or integrated payments. And of course, it's a huge trend in our industry. But the truth is, there's so much more to the story. So in collaboration with NMI, the fully integrated payment solution built to scale, we've launched the Be Solid campaign, where we're exploring embedded finance with guests from leading companies like KeyBank, Bain Capital Ventures, and more. To listen to the latest episodes, visit leadersinpayments.com or nmi.com/resources/podcast. In a world full of squares and stripes, be solid. So beyond kind of having the forums to network and to share experiences, is there anything else that you can think of that maybe we as an industry as a whole should be doing differently or better?
Not differently. I think more on communication. For example, I was made aware of this forum because I Standard Chartered sponsor an event in Mexico City and focus on payments, on cross-border payments. And then we invited a person from SWIFT, which is this network that all the banks use to settle the payments and to consolidate the cross-border process. And this person then invited me to be part of the women's in payments. So until then, I was not aware that this existed. So I think this part of communication, and this can be something that we can discuss, and if we should go above financial services in general, if we should go outside just to make it aware and then try to bring them into the space. But I think this is part of the process. I would not do this comment on a negative way. I think it's part of the process, and we are evolving. And I noticed that the institution, the Women's in Payment, has been on for 10 years. So it's a kind of a young kid in that sense. And we do need time. It's not an easy task to change this behavior that we've been seeing for many, many years, that women are more connected to stay at home, raise the family, etc., and not being in the labor market. But I think communication would be one segment that I would invest more to make sure more people are aware of these forums and they can be benefited by having access to it.
Right. Okay. So as someone who, manages a lot of people, I'm sure that you're hiring people right out of college. So let's play the scenario. You've got a woman who just graduates from university. She's looking at financial services as, to build a career. What advice would you give her to help her be successful in the financial services space?
I would start with that education piece. Even finishing the college year, I would recommend to continue looking at the industry, looking at the market. I was never a big fan of MBAs. I think is a high investment in terms of cost because those are not cheap courses. You would take 2 to 3 years of your life together with your work, so would demand a lot of time from you to be focused on both things. So I would suggest to do a shorter courses like 6 months or 3 months, so more specific in theory, depending on where in the financial services area the person would like to invest her time and getting more experience. And then being, as I said to some people that I recently hired, and be true to themselves and be honest and transparent on what they expected from this relationship, what the institution expects from her. So be clear on that, what is expected from her, being part of that segment, and enjoy the journey, because that was what happened with me. I was brought to this system because I wanted to understand the inflation impacts on everybody's life, because I used to see at home my mom and dad getting the money, rushing to the supermarket, getting all the cars, the little cars with food, stock the food, and then 2 weeks after do the same, because with the high inflation, the prices were changing every day. So I wanted to understand what was behind that, what all those things would happen. And I end up doing relationship, which I do today. So I found myself not being a true economist, which is my formation, is more talking to people, understanding client needs, understand how to connect the products that the bank has to offer with the needs on the other side, understand the dynamics, understand why they would make decisions towards one product compared to the other. So why that one fit better and not the other. And then I found myself throughout those years. So it was not anything that I knew when I joined the financial services area. I thought I would be a pure economist in the desk, doing analysis and theories and trying to project the future of rates or futures of FX, etc., which is not me. I tried to do at the beginning because I started doing gold in the commodities desk of the bank, which demanded me to do a lot of analysis. And I said, no, I want more. I'm not the quiet person. I want to talk. I want to see other people. And then internally, I was able to talk to people about that and explain that that was what I was looking for. And then people opened the doors for me to move areas and start, little by little being exposed to what I found myself today, which is client coverage. So this would be my two main recommendations. Continue investing on the education, being transparent on what you need, and do some test drives, some small exposure. Here at Standard Chartered, we also have this opportunity that you can raise your hand, say, I would like to know more about finance. Can I help you with a 1 week or 2 week of my time in addition to what I do every day to understand finance? And then you can have a flavor. You can have a touch on, I do like, or, at the end, I didn't like, I thought it was different, etc. So then you're testing until you reach the point that you said, I found myself. This is what I wanted to do. This is what I invest. And then you see yourself building your career and moving towards what you expected you would reach after, you finished the college.
Well, let's wrap up with one final question. Maybe talk to us about maybe the programs or the initiatives that Standard Chartered has going on that helps foster an environment where women can bring their full selves to work and be successful.
Sure. I think as any other big institution, we do have some ratios globally that we manage, not only for women. We do the same for Black people, for Latinos, especially in the Americas. In New York is the region where I am based. But specifically on the women, in addition of that, so when we have open positions, we ask in the selection process that we have the same number of resumes between men and women. So at least we start the process in equal terms, in equal levels. In terms of human resources, we have all these benefits in terms of maternity leave or marriage or adoption. So everything that is available in the market. And sometimes in addition to that, it's part of our benefits program in order to attract the women and make them feel comfortable that as we used to see in the past, if you get pregnant and you leave on maternity leave, when you get back, because normally it would take a month or 2 months, you find somebody else doing your job and then you let go, right? Mm-hmm. So we do not want that to happen. So we get ready for that. And also we get ready to have the team prepared to have somebody out on maternity leave for 3, 4, or 5 months. So we make the environment ready for the person to get back and not be worried that something negative would happen when she's back. And in addition to everything, we participate in forums like the Women Payments. We individually in each office, we ask people to bring everything they know from the market that would make us in a better position to offer better conditions for women, to attract women to work with us. And I am an example of that. As I said at the beginning, the thing that attracted me to Standard Chartered was the comfort that I could have an equilibrium between my private life and professional life that was part of the DNA 20 years ago. So now even more than that, I think we are more vocal. And then we are able to show to the market that this is part of our values, that we want to build on that and we want to make it better. And we want to be above what the industry would say, which is a nice thing to hear, right? Something like I heard a person one time telling me it was nice to see in the company's annual report that they have all this diversity, inclusion, ratios, etc. But in the day-to-day, you see that's not happening. This is not the case of Standard Chartered. I'm seeing that happening every day, and I am an example of that. I've been with the bank all those years facing that and allowing other women to get into the bank, knowing that they will be supported in whenever they need. I would say in the same way as men. We do not want to create a segregation internally, but we know women, they demand some extra attention in that sense. And that's what we're doing. But we are not creating a reverse situation where the man would feel not covered or not supported. And because we are going all the way to one side to support women, we want to be a fair institution. We want to be transparent and we want to support men and women in whenever they need. It could be maternity leave or paternity leave or something. But we want to create this equal environment. And for women, I'm seeing this happening at Standard Chartered, especially here in the Americas, which is the region I can see more examples of that happening.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's important to share what companies are doing in this space. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up the show?
Just as I said at the beginning, Greg, really pleased to be here. I'm joining the sponsorship program of Women's in Payment. I really would like to share my experience. I truly believe one size does not fit all. I think all of us need to find our main objective and build based on that. We cannot copy and paste all the women's experience. I think what we can do is look what happened, look what the person did, and then bring to our day to day and say, okay, this resonates to me. This is what I want to do. So I'm hoping through this sponsorship program, I can help all the girls, all the women to find themselves in the marketplace and be able to grow and be able to enjoy and be able to perform well and be recognized, because I know some women like that. Nothing against. I think we can accommodate all the desires, all the requests, and thank you again. Thank you for the time. I really enjoyed the conversation with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know your time is very valuable. So again, I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to all you listeners out there, I thank you for your time as well. And until the next story.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Leaders in Payments podcast. Make sure you visit our website at leadersinpayments.com, where you can subscribe to the show and where you'll find our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please share on your social channels as well.